It is a silent and invisible disease that haunts millions of Americans today. Chronic pain literally changes the way our brains work. It can cause desperation, loneliness, and fear, and can become utterly debilitating.
He said, "Why are you doing this to me? I would rather die."
Yet many who have suffered for years are reconciled to silence.
I'm kind of a private person. I just kind of internalized it and kept it to myself.
They often carry on through unspeakable agony, reluctant to burden others.
My right hip, it was just beat up so badly, and this is the equivalent of a 90-year-old hip.
Without understanding, they are isolated. Without relief, they are discouraged. Without reassurance, anxious.
He said, you have to get over this. You have to learn to live with this. He really thought I'm faking.
They are often misunderstood by doctors, family, and friends. And while others may not see it, their stories remind us why pain matters. Nearly 100 million Americans suffer from chronic pain on a daily basis.
Pain is a devastating chronic illness that most people don't understand exists until they actually experience it.
You see this incredible amount of human suffering out there as a consequence of pain. People whose lives have been ruined, and pain has just taken over their lives. It's robbed their souls, and it's put them into this deep, dark place that they don't want to be.
Despite the high numbers of people who experience chronic pain, many feel they are alone. This is a disease that is often hidden, yet takes a tremendous toll on society.
When we look at the numbers, it's just incredible. It's astounding. We're looking at 100 million Americans. We're looking at between $560 to $630 billion a year. That's $500 billion a year. Now, those numbers, by the way, add up to more than diabetes, heart disease, and cancer combined.
But there is hope. Scientists are working on new technologies and medications that could change the way we see and care for pain. And others are sharing their stories of chronic pain, bringing the magnitude of the problem to light. Pain is real and different for everyone. Understanding how pain becomes chronic and debilitating is the first step to addressing this complex disease. That was the case for a professional athlete named Peter.
Golf's the one sport that drives you nuts, and you're so competitive, you're gonna beat it. It might not be now, might not be 10 years from now, it might not be 20 years from now, but at some point, you're gonna be damn good at it.
Get in there.
Oh. And it's never gonna happen.
Peter Taglianetti has a large family, and they all understand firsthand the pain that comes with playing competitive sports.
Their pain is my pain.
My son, Andrew, was one of the starting safeties for the University of Pittsburgh football team.
I've torn my ACL, lots of scrapes and cuts. It's just part of the process, so.
My daughter played basketball.
I've had concussions, but that's all. Besides, like, sprained ankles and stuff, but that's about it.
Isabella, right now, I'm right on the verge of making her a really intense athlete.
Bring it back this far and hit the ball.
When I was 2, I slammed a marble table on my toe, and then I had to go to the hospital.
Did you cry?
Yeah.
What's our philosophy? There's no crying in sports.
I was 2 years old, Peter.
Dr. Vonda Wright, my wife, we married 4 months ago. She's a mobility doctor. She's an orthopedic surgeon. She's trying to keep me on the straight path about nutrition and athletics and keep moving.
You know, what's interesting is that there are several kinds of athletes. You can put them in two piles. You can put them in the Peter Taglianetti pile, which is gut it out all the time, don't tell the doctor what's going on, and just if something serious happens, then I'll deal with it. And then there are other kinds of athletes who are so in tune with every nuance of the way their body feels that every day there's a new issue.
His children are exactly like him. If the boat is not sticking out, they ignore it.
Dad, is your nose just passed down the family line, or is that just from a few punches? You guys can make fun of me all you want. Until you actually get a paycheck from playing professional sports, you have nothing to say.
Peter played professional hockey for 12 years, winning 2 Stanley Cups.
It beat working for a living. How's that? It beat sitting behind a desk or a cubicle. Play with Mario Lemieux, played against Wayne Gretzky. You know, I played against guys who were so talented. It's a very fast sport. You can go 8 or 9 minutes without a whistle, and it gets really intense. I mean, it's the only sport you can take a stick and whack somebody or punch somebody.
As one of the most aggressive defensemen in the NHL, he knows a lot about pain.
Got hit in the head with a puck, took the top part of my ear off. I got slashed in the face, blew my shoulder out, blew my elbow out, popped my knee a couple times. I had a punctured lung, 13 broken noses, a broken cheekbone, broken orbital bone, and I couldn't tell you how many stitches. I mean, it's been, you know, hundreds and hundreds of stitches over the years.
Peter has a high tolerance for pain, but that isn't the case for everyone. Pain is subjective, so it's difficult to measure how much pain someone is experiencing.
The way that we measure pain is usually on a scale, some type of a rating scale or a pictorial scale. Usually the numerical rating scale is a scale that you say, if 0 is no pain and 10 is pain as worse as it possibly could be, where are you on that scale?
I can only understand it by understanding what you tell me about it. There's no machine I can use to measure it. There's no diagnostic test that a doctor can use that will totally objectify it. And that's been a major issue.
It's very frustrating as a physician to treat a patient who has pain and not be able to measure it. So the way we measure if our therapies are effective, for example, are, well, how do you feel? Has it made a difference? And we try to measure that in sort of softer ways, like, are you sleeping better? What are your activities like during the day? Are you able to perhaps walk the dog or go to the mailbox? So it's very hard to measure. It's very hard to measure improvement, and it's very hard to measure the pain in the beginning.
You get punched and your eye starts to swell shut, you know, you're like, oh, I can keep going, don't worry about it. But some guys will never say it, never wince, never do anything, but you know they're in agony. And those are the ones you respect. And even guys on the other team you respect that are out there playing through injuries.
The feeling of pain is triggered when special nerve endings, called pain receptors, cause electrical signals to be sent to the brain through the spinal cord. The brain recognizes these signals as pain.
So acute pain is when your body sends a signal that there's a reason for, such as you touch a hot stove and you withdraw your hand because it's on fire and it hurts, and that's a very important and necessary signal.
Pain is this fundamental experience that drives us to get away from something that is potentially or actually dangerous. And so it is, by its very definition, one of the most important experiences or sensations we have. In fact, pain is so wonderful because it's so terrible. It's only when pain goes bad, when it no longer is serving that role of protecting us, that it becomes a problem.
Pain goes bad when it changes from acute to chronic. Pain is chronic when it continues, even though the injury that caused the pain is healed. Though he'd been hurt many times before, the injury that eventually led to Peter's chronic pain came as a shock.
It was in a game, my left side was against the boards, and there was a guy standing literally at a standstill. Puck came around to me, I got it, and he just came at me, just kind of coasted into me just to kind of pin me up against the boards. I mean, I've been hit 1,000 times, much harder than that. And it was just the way he hit me, he just pressed my hip and I heard a, and this pain shot down my leg. Never felt anything like it before. I hobbled off the ice and went in the locker room and started moving around just to check it out, and it had no rotation in it whatsoever. It was locked in place. They said, well, I gotta go get an MRI, and they came back and said, like, Jesus, I'm 37 years old, and this is the equivalent of a 90-year-old hip. And they just said, you know, you're done, you can't play anymore. There's no way we can do this. 7 years after I got hurt, I just really started deteriorating. It was a chronic ache, and then if I got caught in the wrong position, then it was a sharp, stinging pain. I couldn't sit long. I couldn't lay down long. I could only sleep a couple hours a night, and then after like 3 weeks, I'd be so tired, I'd just pass out for 7 hours, and I'd be refreshed and ready to go again, and then go back to that whole cycle again.
Chronic pain can stem from an injury, it can stem from chronic disease, it can stem from aging process, it can involve muscles, nerves, bones.
There are over 100 million American adults who have chronic pain of some sort. We're talking about a third of the U.S. population, essentially, with chronic pain.
You just sit there and say, well, I'm not going to let this define me, but it actually did define me. I mean, it's made me a hermit, basically. I couldn't walk. I mean, I was dragging my leg behind me. It would take me almost 10 minutes to get in the car because I had to like turn, sit down, lean back, pick my legs up, get them in the car, sit there for a second to let the pain subside, reach over, grab the door, shut the door, and then sit there until I take a couple deep breaths. Stubborn athlete, I'll just keep going and going and going, and maybe whatever in there will break away and it'll loosen up and I'm good to go. And that's basically my philosophy was, I'll just beat this thing.
Pain goes untreated for a number of reasons. One of those is that people are reluctant to complain about having pain. A lot of people value being strong, being independent, and if they admit that they have a problem they need someone's help with, they admit that they've got a condition that might cause them to need some ongoing medical treatment, then in some ways it's taking away from that sense of independence and that sense of self-control.
That's when it becomes chronic, when it becomes this thing that takes over the person, that takes over their entire being. That's when we're dealing with this beast.
One day, Peter's tolerance for pain came to an end. He couldn't take it any longer.
Finally, I think I was at my breaking point, and I just drove out to my old orthopedic surgeon for the Penguins. They weren't expecting me, and they saw me, and they said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I need to see Chip." And they kind of saw in my face that it was almost like a panicky, scared type thing.
Chronic pain is a biopsychosocial phenomenon. Untreated pain can actually change the way the nervous system and the spinal cord and brain responds. And certainly, chronic pain can disrupt normal psychological and social functioning.
Chip came around the corner and he goes, "Tag, what are you doing here?" And I just started crying. I bawled my eyes out because I just couldn't take it anymore. I think my mind was about to snap.
Peter finally got the hip surgery he needed.
And it was by far 8 years too late. I should have done it right when I was 37 years old.
The surgery made a big difference, but he still has to deal with pain every day and has learned after so many years of being a tough guy, there is a better way to handle it.
There's a better way of doing things. There's a better way of taking care of yourself. There's a better way of pre-injury to post-injury and rehab and how you can stay on the road longer and how you get more out of your exercise program and how you make your life better. And I think a lot of people are missing that. They like I did, I thought I knew it all, and not even close. There's a lot of little things that go into being an athlete, and it's not just winning and losing, it's the journey that takes you from point A to point B. The start of your career to the end of your career and all the things that happen in between. And I wish I knew then what I know now.
Nearly 15,000 people die every year due to prescription pain drug overdose. And more than half of people with chronic pain feel reluctant to tell others they are taking prescription medication for their pain, according to a recent survey.
I have a wonderful husband, and I've been married now close to 35 years. I don't want to particularly give my age, but we have 3 grown children, very grown. I'll say they're 40 plus. We'll leave it at that. We have 3 grandchildren. I've worked in academia, and I've worked in the private sector, and I worked with a consulting firm for about 35 years. And I was very active. And then around 1998, I started having problems with my knees. Some mild pain, some stiffness, but I didn't pay much attention to it. I just kind of worked through it. You know, everyone used to say, "Oh, that's a little bit of arthritis, but don't worry about it."
Winifred and her family live and work in New York City, where walking every day isn't a choice, it's a necessity.
And then in 2000, the pain got worse. I tried to remain active, did a lot of walking up and down steps. I was in constant pain for 4 or 5 years. But I think because it was constant, I got used to it. Pain became my friend. It was osteoarthritis.
Osteoarthritis affects nearly 27 million Americans. After age 55, women are more affected by osteoarthritis than men, and almost everyone has some symptoms over the age of 70.
The pain, though, is the deterioration of the bones, and the cartilage wears down in the bones, and pretty soon it becomes bone on bone, and that causes excruciating pain. But I worked through the pain, and I never talked with anyone about it. It's just my issue. So I learned to live with the pain. I'm not one to take a lot of medication. I try to avoid it as much as possible.
So we've got this problem where we've got medications that have some propensity for misuse and abuse. And on the other side of this, we've been using them for thousands of years for predominantly acute pain, more recently chronic pain conditions. And we find that in a number of patients with chronic pain that these medications can be very helpful.
Like so many people with chronic pain, Winifred refused to take any medication stronger than what she could buy over the counter.
There's a lot of discussion about things like prescription drug abuse and how serious that is. There are about 12 million people in the United States who misuse prescription pain medicines. There are 100 million people who have chronic pain. So we really have to start paying attention to where the problem is here.
As her knees continued to get worse, it became more and more difficult for Winifred to accomplish day-to-day activities.
My pain really got very bad. It was so bad that the right knee would lock on me, and I would have to stand for about a minute or two in place to allow that knee to settle down.
In the U.S., arthritis and related conditions cost nearly $128 billion per year in medical care and lost wages and productivity, something Winifred experienced when it started interfering with her work.
We traveled to our job by subway, and I had to get up the stop ahead of my stop in order to allow my leg to settle so that I could get out of the train at my stop before the doors closed.
Even more embarrassing was trying to hide the pain in front of clients.
Because of our business, we used to entertain a lot and we'd go out to lunch a lot. And it was very embarrassing getting up from a table and everybody else is walking away and you're having to stand there to wait for your knee and leg to adjust so that you can hop out of the restaurant.
So after 3 or 4 years, it got to the point where sometimes she'd cry at night.
Oh, I couldn't fool my husband. He knew, because he knew, particularly at night when the pain was just excruciating, he would say, you've got to do something about that.
And finally, she decided that she would look into it with the doctors.
So in February of 2009, I had my left knee replaced. And then I started thinking about the right knee. In March of 2010, I had total knee replacement on my right knee.
After her knee surgeries, Winifred's ability to accomplish daily tasks improved.
We are always having somebody's birthday party or it's a holiday celebration, and now I'm the one who's making dinner, and we just have a great time sitting here and eating and talking about what's going on in our lives, what's going on in the world, and we try to stay in touch.
I got a family here that's second to none there.
Life is okay, for us. Yeah, we enjoy it.
According to a recent survey, nearly 4 in 10 people with pain say their healthcare professional has not customized a pain management plan to fit their individual needs, lifestyle, and preferences. But there are a variety of treatments available.
Having pain constantly, gosh, you wake up in the morning, not a restful night, a sharpness that progresses down to your foot that's not there, goes up your spine, constantly radiating. You can't go back to sleep. You then think about what created the pain, and you think about ways to fix it. Think about past communications to providers. Why can't they help? You think about, I want to be at a different place. I want to be a dad. I want to be active. I want to work. I don't want to be disabled. I don't want to be discounted. It cycles into a pretty depressing state. In 1996, I joined the Navy and deployed 2 weeks after I graduated high school to boot camp in Great Lakes, Illinois. My grandparents both served in the Navy, and I figured that was a great opportunity for me to follow in a family tradition. I served for 11 years in the Navy, providing health care for Marine Corps and service members, as well as construction battalions. I can't believe it's been 3 months already, to tell you the truth. Where's the time gone? Yeah, I know. How's everything going? I serve veterans clinically. I helped veterans who were coping with readjustment at one point, and now I serve homeless veterans. And it's an honorable mission. Okay, I'll get that squared away.
While in the Navy, Derek met his future wife, Andrea. But before they married, terrible events were set in motion that would change their lives forever.
Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
Out of a strong sense of duty, Andrea volunteered to serve overseas for 6 months. But by the summer of 2004, they were married, expecting their first child. And this time, Derek was leaving for Iraq.
I figured if I deployed now, I could get my duty done and come home and be in time for his birth.
In October of that same year, Derek received orders to move on the outskirts of Fallujah to offer aid to the forces. During the next 2 months, the U.S. military would fight what has been described as the bloodiest battle in the Iraq War. Operation Phantom Fury.
I was in a Humvee. I was with another Marine who was driving and ready to go get these Marines medevaced and get proper aid. Looking over the field, seeing a vehicle, and that was the last that I remembered. We were hit by a suicide driver called a vehicle-borne IED, so somebody drove into our ambulance and exploded himself. The vehicle was shredded pretty heavily with shrapnel, even though they sustained severe injuries themselves. One of the corpsmen that was with me came out, and he saved my life. From what I was told, I was conscious, I was moving erratically, I had some shrapnel in my eye. My leg was, it was pretty mangled. Right away, the severity of it, they knew they had to remove it.
Back home, Andrea got the call all military spouses dread.
I just remember the Army major saying, above the knee amputation, left leg. And after I heard that, I didn't really listen to anything else because I couldn't. I just remember collapsing. I don't know, how do you take that kind of news?
I woke up and I was at VA Palo Alto, and I was so scared because that whole fear of what happened to me. Am I really this messed up? I was in Iraq just a little bit ago, and that was a moment of fear and thinking that I was really messed up.
Derek began rehabilitation for his amputated leg. He noticed that the more he exercised, the worse the pain got. A bone growth called a heterotopic ossification started forming on the upper thigh of his amputated leg.
So literally, your bone began to regrow cells, and so almost a hard coral piece. And that rubbing inside of a prosthetic or inside the muscle created some extensive amounts of pain. So that's where my pain journey really began.
The heterotopic ossification in Derek's leg continued to get worse. His doctors decided surgery to remove the growth was the best option.
They opened it up, they cut it out, and I was given some time for the regular recovery period. So I want this fixed now so I can move forward and go to PT and go to work. Service members, they want to get moving and get on their mission. They don't want to be held back by pain. And then all of a sudden I started feeling something was wrong. I would describe it as needles that would shoot up the leg, but then also down to the foot that's missing. So something called phantom pain, but also it would be triggered by the actual nerve pain inside the residual limb. It was very painful, confusing, depressing. I could not move forward. There was times that definitely did not want to be here any longer, and I wanted to be somewhere else. Then I started communicating with providers. Well, I don't know what that is. I don't, give it some more time. You just had a major surgery, and you're either brushing it off or not validating that there was real pain that was happening in the leg. And it's difficult. I learned that I need to start controlling it. I can't rely on others.
In order to take control of his pain management, Derek needed a change of scenery and a fresh start. He heard about a promising new facility called Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas.
I already came up kind of with my defenses. I'm ready to go to battle. But I was still hesitant to truly believe that I'd find help any longer. When I got there, I was listened to. I wasn't just Derek with the pain problem that we don't know how to fix. I felt like I was part of a team. The team presented a variety of pain treatment options and even plugged me in with mental health treatment. So not just the pain, but the whole picture.
Once pain becomes chronic, there are a variety of treatment options that doctors can use to try to relieve the person's suffering.
So when I think about treatments for chronic pain, I put it into 5 major categories. I think about the pharmacologic treatments, these are the medications. I think about the psychological and behavioral approaches. I think about the interventional, procedural approaches. I think about the physical and occupational therapy approaches. And then lastly, the complementary alternative medicine approaches.
Psychological and behavioral approaches can include education, relaxation, and other coping skills. Interventional procedural approaches such as surgery can relieve pain for many people. Physical and occupational therapy are treatments that can help people live as independently as possible. Complementary alternative medicine is the use of non-mainstream therapy, such as massage or acupuncture. Pharmacologic treatments can include both over-the-counter and prescription drugs. Derek and his doctors at the Brooke Army Medical Center attack the pain from all directions, and in order to stop the pain in his missing leg, they use something called a nerve block.
At that moment, it was instant pain relief for me.
A nerve block relieves pain by interrupting how pain signals are sent to your brain. It is done by injecting into or around a nerve or into the spine. Nerve blocks numb the nerves touched by the drugs.
I was so jubilant, man. I remember jumping around on one leg, and I was so freaking happy, man. You want water?
Yes.
Yes. This is one leg that I've been blessed to have, and it's one that I really enjoy. It's got a lot of miles on it. It's my running leg, and this is the one that keeps me moving.
Derek now is pretty much unstoppable. He does absolutely everything. He's very hard to keep up with. He doesn't let anything stop him.
I got a half marathon done with this one. Maybe one day I'll be able to train long enough to do a full marathon. Everything's possible. To be able to run again, it's such a blessing, man.
Derek's pain hasn't gone away completely. He still has to manage it on a daily basis. But with the proper treatment, he's able to live his life the way he wants to.
It's a journey. Today, pain doesn't rule my life, and I'm very blessed that I can move forward and do the things I want to do. I want to run. I want to be a dad. I want to be a soccer coach. I want to accomplish anything and everything I can to set a good foundation for my boys. I hope that they know when they get older, if they're confronting something difficult, that they'll know resilience. And that would be my blessing. That would be such a wonderful thing if that happened.
Current therapies have done much to help people with chronic pain, and the medical community is promising an even brighter future. People living with pain desperately need validation, understanding, and personalized medical care. Through innovative technologies and research, the medical community is working to achieve those goals. But that wasn't the case more than 30 years ago for Mary Ann, a wife, mother, and piano teacher. Her life suddenly changed from quiet and happy to riddled with unexplainable pain.
I thought, for me, I have choices. The first choice, of course, was suicide. The second choice was to just go to bed, just drop out of society. There were nights that I went to bed or I would just ask God, please, don't let me wake up. I can't do this anymore.
It all started one November day while driving home from the mall.
It was around 11:30, around lunchtime. And as I'm driving down the road, I noticed that at the intersection coming up, there was a stop sign. So I proceeded down the road because I knew the person had to stop. But as I got closer to the intersection, I noticed that the car seemed to be pulling out. But I thought, oh, I'll make this, we're gonna be fine. But I wasn't fine because I heard this loud noise. I knew I was hit. The car spun around and hit me again. After the accident, I looked down and I didn't see any blood, and I felt okay. And I thought, how lucky I am. This could have been a really tragic moment. So the morning after, my lower back began to really hurt. Also had pain down my right leg, which seemed to get progressively worse. Every day it got worse. And then about a week or so later, I had a lot of pain in my neck, through my shoulders. So of course I went to the doctor. The x-rays showed absolutely nothing. The CAT scan showed absolutely nothing. So the doctor thought, Mary Ann, you might have to wait this out and just, let this heal itself and just do what you can.
Mary Ann waited for weeks for the pain to subside, but it never did. Months turned into years, and her pain only worsened.
So this went on and on and on. I thought, if I just get some bed rest, if I just lay in bed quietly and still, maybe this will all go away. Maybe I thought I was doing too much. I wasn't giving my body a chance to heal. So I went to bed for about 1.5 years. It was an awful time. I just progressively got worse. Nothing was working. Nothing that anybody tried for me to do was working. It was very disruptive to my family. I couldn't get the meals. I couldn't do the laundry. I couldn't go to work. My husband became Superman, whether he wanted to or not. If he wanted to maintain our family and keep it intact, he was the one who was doing everything. I was pretty much out of the picture.
Desperate for relief, she continued to seek medical help, but it only added insult to injury.
I remember one time seeing a neurosurgeon, and he said to me, if you don't soon change the way you think, this is going to ruin your life. He really thought I'm faking. He really couldn't see on his MRI why this pain was as bad as it is.
Better communication between doctor and patient is critical. So many organizations have developed tools to help people living with pain.
American Chronic Pain Association, this is Penny. Can I help you? One of the biggest problems is that communication gap between the person with pain and their healthcare provider. So we've developed a lot of graphical communication tools to make the most of that visit with their healthcare provider, to get the most accurate information to them in a short amount of time.
We need to educate our healthcare providers about chronic pain and how to better manage it. That means educating everyone from the medical student who doesn't get right now much training in chronic pain. It means also education of our nurses, our psychologists, our podiatrists, our pharmacists, our dentists, everyone who comes into contact with that patient with chronic pain.
The doctor asked me to describe the pain I was having, and I told him it was like a throbbing pain in my lower back and also a sharp burning pain down my right leg. He really didn't believe me and told me I better shape up, and it was going to ruin my life if I didn't.
Pain is difficult to diagnose and measure, but one promising new technology called neuroimaging might just be changing that.
One of the biggest problems that patients have is that they don't feel validated. I don't see anything wrong. How could you be hurting? How could you be in so much pain? And it causes people to feel very frustrated. So you're doing a little magnetic pulse that is ultimately going to stimulate a part of your brain. What we're trying to do with this technology of neuroimaging is hopefully open up windows into their brains to be able to identify these patterns of brain activity, these changes in structure that may represent the experience of pain. And we found that with about 76% accuracy, we could determine whether or not somebody was experiencing chronic pain based on a pattern of brain activity. It gives us hope that this technology may be useful to ultimately be able to predict who may develop pain after an injury or after surgery, so that we can get closer to the same type of biomarkers we're using with diabetes and blood pressure and other medical conditions.
It took years for Mary Ann's doctors to finally diagnose the source of her chronic pain. She has fibromyalgia and 2 inoperable herniated discs from the car crash. Determined to do all she could to fight the pain, she researched both conditions.
And the thing for fibromyalgia was keep active, do exercises, do everything you can, and you're supposed to feel better. Then I also had 2 herniated discs. All the surgeons said that that would make me worse. So it was like a catch-22. I mean, I didn't know whether I should rest or else make myself get up and be active and do things.
I think the future of pain management will be first better identifying the causes of the pain through better imaging, through better technology. But I think that the treatment of pain lies in this multimodality approach towards pain and treating the patient as a whole patient. That these patients have their entire lives. It's not just their pain that we're treating, it's their entire experience of pain.
Mary Ann spent several weeks at a pain management clinic learning breathing and meditation techniques that help her to live more comfortably, and she began prescription drug therapy to lessen some of the pain. But when she returned home, she found a new set of challenges.
After I was released from the pain management clinic, it became apparent to me that I didn't know anybody like myself. And so it was still depressing, it was still frustrating. And one day, I was sitting in my living room and there was a commercial on television. And it talked about the American Chronic Pain Association and a support group.
So give me your zip code and I'll see if we have a support group in your area. I understand what it's like to live with pain. For 6 years, I went from one doctor to another trying to find a way to actually get rid of my pain. And it wasn't until I went to a pain management program that I realized that people can actually learn to live with their pain, but we have to be taught. We teach them how to do peer-led support groups.
I really needed to talk to other people who understood, besides doctors, what I was going through. And it was wonderful. It was like these people, I didn't have to explain myself.
A couple things that you cannot do in group: can't talk about your pain. The more you talk about your pain, the more you're going to think about your pain. And so what we're trying to do is redirect their attention off of their pain and onto something they have more control over.
Even though we are people with pain, the pain is not our identity. It really taught me that there are people like myself out there who really got it.
One of the topics discussed at her group is the controversy surrounding prescription drug abuse and misuse.
It's becoming more and more difficult for doctors to prescribe opioids because of the abuse that people are having with them. So it's really, really a problem for folks like me and those of us who live with constant pain to be able to get the medication that we need.
Not only are doctors often reluctant to prescribe opioids because of the potential to abuse them, but many people who are living with chronic pain avoid them for the same reason. In order to combat the rise in prescription drug abuse, researchers are working to develop opioid medications with abuse-deterrent properties. The FDA encourages the development of abuse-deterrent formulations and believes that these products have promise to help reduce prescription drug abuse. Until science perfects a way to measure pain and discover tailored therapies that allow those with pain to live a full and rich life, Mary Ann finds fulfillment in helping others in their journey.
I always have pain. There's never a time that I'm sitting anywhere, standing, doing anything, that the pain is not constantly with me. But through years, if I didn't have a loving, supportive husband, I would never have survived. And I mean that literally.
I think love has a lot to do with it. You know, a little bit of pain's not gonna make me fall out of love.
There is hope, and you can live with pain, but you really have to take an active role.
That's why I do the support group. If there's somebody out there that I can help by telling them my story and, look, I've survived, you can too.
According to a recent survey, 4 out of 5 people with chronic pain turn to family members or friends for help. Half rely on their spouses. But many still don't get the help they need. 88% of people with chronic pain say they sometimes feel like a burden asking others for help. Dealing with debilitating pain can leave anyone feeling like they have few options. Some consider giving up on themselves and their families.
There's few things as devastating for an individual as to watch somebody they love in pain, even a short run. But if you see it chronically over day after day, it wears you down in so many different ways, psychologically and physically and mentally and spiritually.
If the pain goes untreated for too long, they can spiral into a dark and lonely place, dragging their caregiver with them.
That's the whole thing about pain. It leaves no survivors, it leaves no prisoners. It takes everything, it sucks everything in.
Life at 18 was perfect. I lived to perform. I was a ballerina, a singer, and an actress. And I had plans of having a film career and incorporating my singing and dancing into that career.
The loser buys the ice cream. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
You first.
I met John when I was 19 years old. I loved everything about him. I knew he was going to kick up dust for the rest of his life.
I think we know who's going to win this. You can quit right now? Okay.
I'll take my chances.
Okay. I thought, my God, this is a vision. What a beautiful woman. What's the problem?
You really want to do that?
Yeah. Why?
Okay,
You're all
change
covered.
it.
What am I going to do?
Absolutely nothing.
She was a dance major, and I was a theater major, and it was like that was it. We were ready to go to LA and take on the world, and it was going to be just, honey and roses after that.
Ballet is really hard on the body. We're taught to work through our pain. I was dancing at the bar, and as I stretched up, it felt great, and I stretched back, and then the teacher said, "You're high-level dancers. When you come up, stretch your back out." And I heard a pop. It was in my right hamstring, and it was like my whole world just shattered.
Hoping the injury would heal, Cynthia stayed off her feet for 8 weeks, but the pain didn't go away. She was unable to continue her rigorous ballet schedule at university, but she was determined to continue dancing. So she quit school and got a job dancing jazz in Reno, Nevada.
I auditioned for a part in an illusion act. I got the part. They didn't know that at that point it was very difficult for me to walk. I loved that job, and I was going to do anything to save that career. I wasn't going to let that career go. But the pain kept getting worse, and I remember there were probably 3 occasions where I thought that during the act, the paramedics are going to have to come and they're going to take me away. There's no way my legs are going to get me through that act. My pain spread from my right leg into my left leg at exactly the same place. And that's when I knew, basically, that it was over, and I had to quit that job. How does a ballet injury spread? It didn't make any sense.
She didn't know it yet, but she was suffering from a condition called Complex Regional Pain Syndrome, or CRPS. In 90% of cases, the condition is triggered by trauma or injury. It would take Cynthia 14 more years to get a diagnosis.
As things progressed worse, I was doing more for her. I sometimes had to carry her. I would have to help her walk to someplace. And I was the one driving all the time. A million different things, little things that we take for granted. It was a burden, of course. It was all difficult to grasp. Even after the first couple of years, I thought this is gonna get better. I mean, it just had to get better. We became more housebound. She would sleep more. I mean, we were losing contact with people. We were losing the natural progression of life that goes on, especially in your mid-20s. And we were trapped in a house. We were isolated. We were cut off. I had a fantasy for many years that I was just gonna pack up the old Honda Civic and head east on the 15 and just keep going. Because it's so overwhelming on so many different levels.
Don't say goodbye when you don't have to go.
Obviously, the stress level of the caregiver is going to be very great. There might be more irritation, arguments going on in the family. but you do still need to try to have the person work through it.
Inherently, I think we just, of course, want to run, but you pledged your love to someone, you made certain vows and sickness and health, and you stick it out. At the end of the day, there's really nothing you can do to help the pain. All you can really do is offer them some support and reassurance that things are going to get better.
But don't say goodbye.
About 4 years into my pain experience, the emotional pain eventually got worse than the physical. Nobody believed me, and the pain wasn't going away, and everybody had left, and all the doctors were saying I was crazy, and the torture didn't seem to be letting up. I didn't see an end in sight, and my career was gone.
The psychological fallout in people who have chronic pain can be tremendous. If you lose your job, that's a key part of how you define yourself. And if that's taken away from you because you have chronic pain, now it's like there's a hole in your identity that you have to fill in. The incidence of depression in folks who have chronic pain is 2 to 3 times as high as it is in people who don't have chronic pain. Suicide is at least twice as likely among people who have chronic pain compared to those who don't.
I came up with a plan of suicide. I found a motel, and I was going to take my life. I was going to get out of this hell. And boy, John got sick of hearing it, because I would talk about it as a fantasy. And I realize now that it was my coping mechanism. It was a huge coping mechanism for me to stay alive.
Planning a suicide might have given Cynthia a sense of control and helped her to cope, but it left John constantly worried about her.
When someone is that despondent with their chronic pain and they feel like they don't want to go on anymore, and you love that person, you know, you make deals with the devil. You do whatever you can to keep them as upright as possible.
The burden that caregivers experience when someone's got chronic pain is just phenomenal. Because you've got someone that you love and you're seeing them suffer on an everyday basis. And the effect of that on you can be just tremendous.
Cynthia's doctors eventually diagnosed her with CRPS. Sadly, the diagnosis didn't mean that she would be cured, but she was able to start a treatment plan to manage the pain better.
I realized with integrative care that I had a lot of the answers, and I'm slowly working as a team doing acupuncture, acupressure, doing meditation, the self-care of literally just going to bed at the same time every night, just things like that. Then I went into a partial remission about 3 years ago. The doctors say it was a miracle.
Yeah, things have gotten better on many, many levels, because, to be honest, if this thing doesn't kill you, it only makes you stronger, and hopefully it makes you wiser.
Cynthia's newfound lease on life is well spent. She and John started a nonprofit organization called For Grace that works to ensure the ethical and equal treatment of women in pain.
Women are predisposed to all of the chronic pain diseases. We feel pain more intensely than men. We have a lower pain threshold. But when we report our pain to our physicians, we are told that it's hormonal, all in our heads. We are given sedatives and psychiatric referrals, whereas men are much more likely to be believed. Now, men are not treated well for pain either, so we all need better treatment.
There are many studies which show that although chronic pain is poorly treated through all segments of the society, that there are members of certain racial and ethnic minority groups, and actually women, who are at greater risk of having undertreated pain or their pain less adequately addressed than white males. The way that we need to address this is, one, shining light on the problem and making healthcare providers really more cognizant of the fact that these disparities exist in the way pain is assessed and treated.
We're helping women in pain. Thank you for being a part of it.
I love For Grace, our nonprofit organization. I'm able to generate media for a lot of other women who want to tell their stories. There's so much work, but we get to save people.
After years of darkness and isolation, John and Cynthia are finally seeing the light of day and offer hope to anyone who may be in the same situation.
The one thing I would tell caregivers of people with chronic pain would be to understand that you're a vital part of what's going on to keep this going, keep this sustained. You need to take care of yourself. I'd feel guilty for not having the pain she had, and I feel guilty for not having chronic pain myself or not suffering. And it's nothing to be guilty about, because it is a marathon. This is not a sprint, it's a marathon. You can have a quality of life with chronic pain. You can have that dance with chronic pain, and you can still have a joyful, fulfilling life. It's important to keep that perspective and to keep that hope alive at all times.
For almost 1/3 of Americans, pain is real, and they are reminded of it every day. To fight chronic pain, it takes persistence, courage, resilience, and will.
It was pretty depressing and sad, but I control my pain, I control me, and I control what I do and how I cope. That's the battle, I think, coming around this time. I'm glad to be alive.
The important thing to know about chronic pain is to always have hope. Keep searching for a practitioner that can help you. Use your connections, read about it, and don't be afraid to try other things. And never let somebody say, no, there is no hope.
They tell their stories so others will know they are not alone.
It's about building understanding about it, appreciation, respect for it.
Hold on tight, we're gonna take a fall.
I'm 31 years into this. I can never fully understand what she's experiencing. I can never feel her pain. But I know something about her suffering. I know some about the hardship, so I have empathy. It's about cultivating understanding and empathy for people with chronic pain.
They tell their story so others can find the resources they need to keep fighting. To open our eyes to the seriousness of the disease.
I feel for the person who's suffering. I feel for the family members. It's a tragic situation. And we need to work at a national level from a public health policy to be able to better address this. We need better studies to figure out what's working and what's not working.
To open our hearts to compassion.
Fundamentally, this is about connection, a human-to-human connection, and we as doctors can't ever forget about the power of the human-human connection. And you get an opportunity to really engage that with people with chronic pain, and that's what I find so professionally fulfilling.
Only then can we make a difference in the lives of millions living with chronic pain.
The whole world needs to be educated about pain. It's been very unfortunate that we've had such tragedy. But look what we've survived. We're such strong people.